You have a good sense of direction. Some people seem to know exactly where they are at every single moment. Others have a more creative sense of direction, and the idea of using a compass and a map might even spark a bit of anxiety. Psychology expert Dr. Jo Lukens is with me to discuss. Good morning.
Good morning, Susan.
So how do people develop a sense of direction?
We start it very young and we learn it in a multitude of ways. As children, we play games that actually have something to do with a sense of direction. So we play hide and seek. Yeah. Or I was watching a grandmother in a coffee shop the other day, and she was directing the 2-year-old who had to go and get something. And with the words we use and we describe it, we teach a sense of direction in some ways from a very early age. And we engage in navigation tasks. We play video games. People who like outdoor games as well often do well in the navigation stakes.
I keep thinking back to doing orienteering and things like that at high school, on school camp and things like that. But what are some of the basic strategies that people can use to find their way?
Yes, so depending on where you are and what your purpose is, where you're trying to get to. So sometimes people will base it on landmarks. So they'll orientate themselves around, say, a mountain range that might be able to see, or a river or some sort of waterway, something like that. We might remember routes. Some people use mental maps, which what that means is conceptually you build your spatial awareness around where you've been moving and what you've been doing. So some people do it that way. Some people do pay attention to compass directions, those who can navigate off the sun or something like that. So, and then, of course, there's those of us that rely on GPS technology as well.
One of those things that it helps us. It's been a game changer for a lot of people, but it also means that I guess we're not improving our directional fitness.
Yes, absolutely. So we do see quite a strong impact that GPS technology has had on our sense of direction. There's no doubt it can get us there, and usually more effectively. And I have to say I am one for relying on GPS technology. In fact, I've even changed the voice in my car. So I talk to my GPS technology. I don't know what that says about me, but I don't think that helps. And that's what the research says. It doesn't actually improve our sense of direction.
Are there genetics involved in this?
So less than we might think. So there has been some studies conducted with identical and non-identical twins looking at the role of genetics in navigational ability, and it doesn't seem to have as much of an influence as we might think. So it does suggest that good navigators are mostly made, not born.
Interesting. I would ask my dad and his twin about this, but they would both say that they're better than the other one.
There's that as well. Yeah, maybe we don't rely on
that's a competition side of things. Dr. Jo Lukens, do cultural factors affect our navigational abilities as well?
They do, and we actually see quite a strong influence in this. So there's been a lot of research conducted in some of the Nordic countries, because that is a place where typically some of those things that you mentioned before, so like orienteering, sports and so forth, where they're more prominent. And certainly people who are in rural residents and many of our First Nations people are particularly good in that navigational space because of their direct experience with that. So connection with land, it makes sense, doesn't it, that people would excel in that particular area.
Yeah. And probably I kind of joked about it being a fitness thing, but it's if you're honing those skills and in touch with those things, I guess that makes sense that you'd be better at it than somebody that's...
Yeah, that's right, because it very much is a mental activity, and it's a good thing for us to do. When you've got the luxury of time, I was fortunate to run into Michael on my way into the studio this morning, and he said, sometimes it's nice to be lost. So
that's true.
When you have time, it's okay to be lost.
Okay,
if you're a little bit time poor, it may not be so easy.
But it's not nice to tell people to get lost.
No, not at all.
What about a gender gap? Is there a gender gap in navigation?
There doesn't seem to be a strong evidence base for that. Okay. So while some might advocate that their gender is or isn't better at this, it does seem to be more culturally based and much more experiential. So it really is about how much you've been taught navigational skills as opposed to it being a gender factor.
Very interesting. Is there anything that we can do to improve our navigational fitness?
It's another one of those mental factors. Just takes a bit of conscious practice for us to be able to do it, paying closer attention to directions, creating mental maps, looking out for landmarks and so forth, any of those sorts of things, and maybe every now and again turning the GPS off.